Hey, Matt,
Hello, Bryan.
look who we have here.
There's another person here. Who is this?
This is Jeremy Van Hooser. Jeremy, who are
Hello.
you?
Who am I?
Yeah.
Well, I am friends with Bryan. I worked with Bryan many years ago at an animation studio. Bryan introduced me to things like weird food and strange ties and influenced my life forever.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, so I've been an artist for a very long time. I'm probably going on around 30 years of creative professionalism, which is a strange thing to say. And I've been in the games industry actually for around 20 years. So I took a lot of the art, illustration, character design that I did at the beginning, and I played a lot of games. And I was like, wait, there's a lot of art in these games. So I ended up switching over. I went to work at Cartoon Network, but in their games studio. So I kind of married the two worlds that I knew and loved. And then from there, I've been working in games on the art and creative side. So yeah, been doing this a long time. I work at the intersection of art and technology, so it's always an interesting conversation when this comes up to talk to friends and peers about this stuff. So yeah, really happy and excited to be here.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Jeremy. Good to
Rock
see
on.
you.
So to start, just to kind of kick us off, I usually start by just showing whatever the latest thing is. So I have a couple videos by an artist who's been using AI to create some interesting things. And then I wanted to show the latest Google VO videos that have just come out, just so we can get a sense of where it's at, the level that it's at, etc. Give me a sec. I'm just gonna. Okay, so I'm gonna show a couple videos by Frederick Johnson, who is what is he using? I think he's using Stable Diffusion. If you guys are familiar with that, um, just to kind of give you a sense of uh, where it's at with some artistic and or with some AI generated I an artist stuff. I don't I don't even know how to
Some
refer to it
words.
anymore.
Yeah.
You know, things. Okay, let's start with this. Okay, live and kind of Jules Verne
Hmm.
esque. And this guy is constantly posting this stuff because it generates so quickly. And to make this sort of thing with traditional computer graphics would be quite an endeavor. All right, so you get the gist of this stuff. Remember how I feel about the AI stuff? That there is something interesting and fascinating about this. All right, and then here's some more of his stuff. Yeah, before I want to move on to showing you kind of the latest Google VO stuff. That's basically the state of the art with AI video generation stuff. Uh, any quick thoughts on comments on this before I jump into that?
These all have, they appear to be like 3-second clips. They had a
Yes,
limit, time limit. Is that the
yes,
limit right now still for this kind of complexity? I thought we were up to like a minute.
um, yes. So you can go longer than this. Um, the thing is, since he's using stable diffusion, and I don't know if he's using his own compute power to be generating this, which would then affect, how long it takes. He also may just be trying to generate as many of these things as he can in different ones.
Hmm.
But yes, you can go longer. Um,
Yeah, I think it's all about effort, right? I mean, you can definitely do a lot more, but it takes a lot more. And I think it's easier to sort of do, which is why I think a lot of them look like this. It's easy to do quick clips and then piece them together. And
yeah,
I think, Matt, I'm sure you're thinking the same thing. As a longtime art director, I'm seeing like all these like art direction shifts, where I'm like, wait, how does that go with that? And there's a general tone, but I have so many notes. So I think that's another sort of sign of the quick, the quick prompt render then clip together as a whole cohesive thing. Like I think that's where you can do longer, but I think even if you do a longer piece, when it switches or cuts a camera angle or does something different, it is very hard to hold it to a piece of art direction. And so it's definitely, I mean, again,
right.
it's always cool to see sort of these collages of thought, but I start, my art director brain starts ticking immediately of like, oh, I have notes. Oh, I have notes. I
Right.
need to tell the artist to do X, right? So I think it's hard not to hold it to the same standard that I would an art team or someone that's like, hey, can we, this is the consistent vision. Because even in that, it's like, okay, a little bit more futuristic and advanced, and then back to the sort of Jules Verne wind up technology, and then no, it's kind of Star Wars with a little bit. Oh, now we're back here, and so I think that's definitely a sign um, of AI today, where it tends to lose focus and interest very quickly as it darts around.
Consistency has been a a,
Yeah,
a
it
thing
can be
that's
done, but it's very difficult, and
yeah.
I think
Although
yeah,
when we get to the VO stuff, um, you'll we'll kind of see where we're at with that. These make me think of science fiction book covers
yes.
that are just moving.
There's somebody behind you,
Some
Brian. I'm just saying.
there's actually a couple people here. Here's another one.
There's a large nose,
Yes, this is Wojo, and Wojo's asking for his dinner an hour early, and that's what Wojo's doing.
as one does.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Quick question on this model again. What is this one called he's working
This
on?
is Stable Diffusion,
Right. And then,
and
so this,
this is one that you can install on your own computers,
okay. And then
and you
this
can
is,
modify it yourself.
it continues to be prompts and then
Yes,
adjust the prompt and then adjust the prompt and then adjust the prompt. So it's
yes,
basically uh, telling a story over and over again and refining it. That's the limit of human involvement.
yes. Although I don't know whether he gave it any images. It's like some
Okay.
of them you can give it an image and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
base it on this and start on this." I don't know if that's what he did with
S-
these. I don't know if that was his process. But yes, you could do all of this without that. You can just give it text prompts and
Okay.
say, guy kneeling over machinery with a doggy looking robot above him, blue color palette, etc.
Yeah. There's definitely been advancements in the please change this area of the image.
Yes. Yep.
It's a pain in the butt. It doesn't work totally well. It's obviously, getting better and better, but yeah, I think this stuff is still very much in the realm of try to refine your prompt, and still, instead of like refine, 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 it kind of just regenerates every time. So you're trying to keep a lot of the same prompts that you had, but maybe changing a keyword or a word on the end. So there's a lot of waste as far as, from our perspective, from a creative thought process.
Yeah.
Um, but again, this changes daily. So
I'm going to show one other little thing just by him as well. I forgot I had it. Anyway, you get the idea of that too. This had a little bit more consistent look.
I really like swans.
Yes, very swans, very definitely a certain color grading that they like going on there too. But
I mean, there's some cool art direction in there, as far
mm-hmm.
as like some of the stylized look and feel. It's funny, every time I see these, and again, I know we're going to see more advanced tech, and it is getting
Yeah,
better, but I feel like a lot of these look more like parallaxing single frames versus like really
yeah,
good intuitive animation. So
yes,
it's almost like they haven't quite found that combination yet. And yes, it'll keep getting better. But every
yeah,
time something moves, it's either really stiff or like an interpretation of like a few weird frames of a still versus like, wow, like, whether it's the bird flying or even the ship floating, you're kind of like your brain's not, it's not there yet. And so
yep.
it's just interesting seeing maybe as they get into more motion, and they're pulling a lot more examples, obviously, of movement that it's getting a little more smooth.
Well, that segues nicely into
That's what I figured.
the current VO model, VO2. So this is let's see, let me get the artist, the guy who made these. Um, Laszlo Gall. I'm butchering however you pronounce it, but these are all produced. He had a basically this is stuff he made with the advanced beta version of the new Google video generation stuff. So I mean, I believe it also understands physics, like the actual math of physics, which is helping it get a lot more realism. These are really good lengths for commercial cuts, like a car commercial. Oh, look at that boat right there. Do you think in a lot of these, how many people looking at these wouldn't be able to tell this is AI generated?
I think not many at this cadence. Although I think we're quickly becoming a civilization that's going to say, "Is this AI?" before it even
Whether it is
presents
or not.
itself. Yeah.
One area that I think it's really excelling at too, I'll show that next, is product rendering and video. But this compared to 1 year ago,
Yeah.
unbelievable. Just unbelievable. It's also supposed to be extremely fast compared to previous video generators. All right, let's see. I'm just going to jump to. Oh yeah, here they just wanted to show that it could do multiple human characters all dancing on the same. Yep, K-pop. But this just a few months ago would not have been possible. Just doing multiple characters like that. Yeah, and then here's the, here it now understands physics. So it's doing like the diffusion based stuff, but then it's also got an understanding of real physics. So it's up to the level that it can produce. Let's see here. How's the honey? Yeah. I see this replacing food photography, CG, commercial stuff. Yeah, I think with the addition of the physics, it really made it pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how all that works. Because, these are trained models, based on what it has seen, for lack of a better term. And to me, like, the big question is, if you're showing general food, it's awesome. Like, I don't know what bread that is, but it's delicious bread, right?
Right.
If I'm showing French fries from a particular place, like, you'd almost have to, like, put in a lot of work to, like, scan, get everything perfect, and then you can do whatever you want with those French fries, you know what I mean? So it's almost like, if we keep it really vague, it's stunning right now, because I'm just looking at general scenes of things that my brain perceives, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this generally looks like a thing. So then, it just depends on how specific the product needs to be.
Right. Could you
train it? You need to train it to be that product.
Right.
Which I think you can. I think you can. I mean, it just takes a lot of work.
I mean, that all looked pretty delicious.
It's all delicious.
Yeah. And then, this was just kind of fun. It's just a dog riding around. All right. Well, that's where we're at.
That's one of the places we're at. That is true.
Yes.
As a side note, did anyone see any of the Nvidia presentation yesterday that they did at CES to talk about their AI?
Is that about their new chip that's...
Well, it was about a lot. It was about their new chip that's like, a gajillion times faster than their last chip. And, they found alien technology, and now it's going to be a crazy, it's the same type of thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of their conversations now are around putting AI in everything. And so one of the conversations they had was that they have a graphics card that can give you more frames by, like, sort of stretching between frames and then using AI to, create other frames to make, smoothness. That, and there's another technology they've invented, and it's right at the beginning, but there's a technology they've invented to make faces that game developers create look better. So it will use generative AI to read the face that you've created as a developer and then smooth it over and make it look more realistic. Now, my first reaction to that is no, because if I'm making a face in a game of a character, I've thought a lot about what that face looks like. And even if there are limitations, I've used art direction to maximize the stylization of that character. There's a story behind that character. And then if you look at, you should check it out after this. If you look at what they're doing almost a beauty filter, where suddenly everyone's wearing makeup and everyone looks really smooth, like not taking into account storytelling at all, art direction at all. So that's kind of what, as I look at these, they're stunning in their execution. But my question is, like, what am I supposed to be feeling? What am I supposed to be seeing? Right now, I see general execution technically, and it has convinced my brain that that honey looks delicious. But if it's supposed to convince me of something specifically, or in our world, if it's supposed to tell a story or show me a character, if you look at a lot of those humans that it's rendering, it's a lot of very vague expressions and really random faces. And to me, one of the greatest things about watching a movie or a short is watching an actor do what they do best, which is convey human feeling and story and emotion. And so I think, there's a million conversations we could have here. Execution is getting so good. My
Hmm.
question is still, I don't know exactly what I'm getting from that other than the execution of a basic visual idea, no matter how shiny it is. So there's a lot to talk about there, but I think we're getting so far in some areas, and I feel like we're leaving behind some really core ones that are usually the reason why we started doing this in the first place. But, technology is going to technology. We just
Right.
have to kind of see where it ends up and where it's important.
Do you think it'll get there?
I have to say this at the beginning. I think this whole thing is a snowball that's not going to roll back up the hill. Like I don't think it's like suddenly we decide, oh, you know what? Just kidding. Let's go back and really value artists. I don't think we're going to do that. I think we're going to continue to push it and continue to find some things that are, usable. I think the first things that are going to happen are going to be pretty terrible according to us, because it's going to be generated ad video on your feed that comes out instantly based on your likes. It's going to render stuff that supposedly is supposed to appeal to you. It's going to be terribly fake
Yeah.
and plastic. I think it's going to continue to get better and better and better. Will it ever get to the point that I'm talking about, though, where I'd rather watch this than a brilliant actor just go through their human motions? I don't know. Um, and then in my industry, in games, it's very interesting because, technically you could procedurally generate anything, but like the rhyme and reason of doing that it's very different. If I'm just worried about cool things flying at my face, sure, we can already do that. Like there's plenty of things we could do just to have all kinds of procedurally generated objects come at you. But if I'm looking to craft a moment or give you a compelling character or give you a reason to spend more time in a world, um, I think this will get better at that. I still have a hard time imagining the why. Like the why usually starts with a human emotion or a human feeling, or it's a human something to other humans. And so, sure, there will be instances where it's like, can a machine do X like crazy? Yes, and that's going to be fun to watch. But the replacing, because you go on LinkedIn these days, and what used to be a, hey, maybe this can help me get a job, has now become every AI evangelist telling you that your job is over. um,
Hmm.
and it's like, that to me, like there's going to be a few years here where it's just a gold rush on replacing expensive things. If I can replace an expensive thing, make it super cheap, great stuff comes out of the pipe, it's every executive and studio head's dream. Don't let them tell you otherwise. It is. And what starts with, I just went through this in a company where it's like, look, this is the artist's dream, right? We're going to give every artist a super tool belt. We're not replacing anybody. We're just going to give everybody a lot more ability. First of all, incorrect. That's not, no one's asking for that. Second of all, someone told me this is almost like a solution looking for a problem. That was not the question. The question wasn't, hey, can you take away all of our ability to do the work? That wasn't the request. And so I think right now we're in this interesting phase where, wait, you're telling me that I don't have to spend as much money to make creative things come out of a pipe, and then I can charge for those creative things. That puts more money in my pocket. Oh wait, I can go faster. Oh wait, I can do this cheaper. None of that is a conversation that artists traditionally have, and not once have I seen, and sort of like what Matt said, when it cures cancer. My question at the beginning was like, look, I'm totally open minded to this, but show me a piece of art or a process or something that I'm going to see and be like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Like, let me dive into this. This is incredible. This is amazing. Like, creative expression that hits me in a good way. And this rivals the best concept artists that I could hire. And this is incredible. I haven't seen that. I look at some of that video and it's cool, but I also know that there's commercial cinematographers right now that are, could rip that and make it look the same way. The difference is you could potentially buy that in a box for much less money, not hire those people. So it's not really a discussion around this is so amazing that it's going to make art itself better. That's not the discussion. That's the
Mhm.
one I want to have. If we're going to do that, then let's kick that can. But that's not what we're having. What we're saying is, can I get 80% of what you can give me for a fraction of the cost and at twice the speed? And those are discussions that are not creative. Those are discussions that, that are, hey, can we make money? Can we do it quickly? So I think that's where this gets all muddled, where it's almost being refactored as an artist conversation or a creative conversation, or how do we do this to help the artist? Well, that's not the question. I think artists should be at the head of this conversation for sure. And it was sort of what my pushing in my last role was like, look, artists aren't asking for this, but if you're going to push this technology, let's get some good artists at the top of it so you can ask them real questions and they can give you real answers. It's not really what's happening, though. It's more like,
Mm-mm.
hey, we created this piece of software. It generally does a creative thing. How can you use it? It's like, well, I don't know if I want to. Oh, well, you need to. So tell us how maybe we could tweak it. So I think it's been a very interesting road very quickly where we're getting executionally better, but we haven't really answered why, like, why are we doing this again? And then when we try to answer that, the answer is not creative at all. It's more like, oh, wait, I don't have to hire a team to do this. I don't have to spend money. I don't
It's
have to. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also getting easier. So,
Oh, yeah.
like anybody could sit down and crank out some of this stuff.
Hmm.
And if you're not on the creative side and you try that out and it's like, "Oh wow, look how easy this was. Look how quick this was. Look how cheap this was.
Yep.
We got to use it."
Yep. Well, and I think something that we will hit first is the recognition of where it's not right. Like, oh, okay, that's off. That's obviously
Mhm.
not a thing that we would do. The problem, maybe it's not a problem, it's a problem for us, is that the majority of Earth's population are going to be like, oh my God, this orange is so shiny. Like I typed in orange and it came out, it looks like an orange, and it is sort of this magical experience. So I think what I have experienced in whatever field is that AI, like generative AI artwork, is very, very effective if you're loose on what you need.
Mm.
So, for instance, if I type in, I want a picture of a robot running across a grassy field, chasing a butterfly with a butterfly net, it's going to give me that. I guarantee you it's not going to be the image I have in my head as an artist. It's going to give me, 4 examples in Mid-Journey of generally what I asked for. None of them are going to be exactly what's in my head. And then it's going to be very difficult to start giving it art direction. You can do it, but it's a lot of work and you're trying to wrangle this giant thing. If you're not looking at it as an artist or someone that has a very specific need for a professional project, or even someone that just doesn't think like an artist and they're like, yep, that looks like a robot. You did it in 30 seconds and you're pretty good on the first pass and it feels like magic. So I think that's something that we as creatives who are like, hey, let's be really careful with how we approach this. We're up against like a marketing bump, because for most people they're like, what do you mean? Like, your grandma or your mom's like, oh my God, I just made the Christmas card. I typed in like snowy hill and reindeer with skis on, and there they are. Like it's the most incredible experience. So I think
But
that's an
for something
interesting
like
conversational
that,
point. Yeah.
yeah, but for something like that, a lot of people don't care. I mean, that's all they
No.
want. So, like, okay, the example of the reindeer greeting card, what's going to happen to the reindeer greeting card artists,
Right.
because most people probably don't care exactly how much control the artist had over the creation of that, or what
Correct.
yeah, I don't know, what do you think, Matt?
Well, I'm appreciating hearing you, Jeremy, talk about this from somebody who I imagine, especially over the past year, has really bumped into this head on. And dollars and cents wise,
Yeah.
you have to deal with this. I can have an opinion, but still, the people who are going to hire me are asking me to do my thing, and
Right.
they don't want me to use AI. Uh, and so the thing that I've come to is what you brought up time and again. This is about money and this is about time. It's not about creativity. And I heard you say too, it's a question, it's an answer looking for a question. The question is why?
Yeah.
Why? Uh, And then the other thing is yeah, it's about time and money. That's what's
Yeah.
about right now. And I like hearing too that, you know, all of these people developing these quote unquote creative uh, um, mechanisms. It's not about the human involvement. It's about the mechanical involvement. And how do we get humans involved in this a little bit more?
Yeah.
Uh, what's the percentage of human involvement in any of the things that we just saw today? I would say it's less than 5% of the finished product.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Okay,
And I
hold on.
also think,
Let
yeah,
me
go
just.
ahead. Go ahead.
I'm going to leave soon. The other thing that the issue of, and I guess this is a pride thing on having worked hard and also been told since I was a little, wow, you're good at this, right? I came with a gift and I worked at it. Okay. And what we heard from a person who is doing their thesis on these issues early on in the Californian parade, which was a little over a year ago, um, this is representing the democratization of creativity. So nobody has to be gifted anymore and
Yeah.
nobody has to work hard. How does that help humanity?
I'm not sure people are worried about that. It's funny when you said that, it made me think of The Incredibles. I don't know if you remember
Yep.
that movie where it's like, if everyone is super, is anyone? Um, but I
Yeah.
think I think that's an amazing point, and obviously I think the three of us sitting here, it hits us right in the heart. I struggle with that question and answer because it's like, okay, what does that mean to everyone? And I also sort of I also recoil a little bit where it's like, oh, it's the democratization of, okay, you guys are not gatekeepers anymore. It's like, no, like it's not that. It's just the fact that it is hard. Everyone sort of chooses a path in their life generally to focus on and get better at. This was ours. It's like, hey, I'm gonna put in the hours. What is it? 100,000 drawings. Like you start early, you make a big mess, you get a little bit better. It's just the same with engineers and doctors. It's the same thing. So if you told me that you created an AI program that would replace doctors, which I mean, we may get there, but my point is, I still want a doctor at the helm. Like I still want to make sure, like I want to understand how much of that profession is driving that versus business guy making art app. So it's like there's still, to your point, I think some of this is inevitable. But the thing I would push is it's gonna take you a lot longer to get to any sort of benefit to humanity if you don't engage artists at the top of that. And if you don't listen for real. Because what I've experienced is, oh, hey, we've gathered all you artists here today to talk about AI. We're really excited about this thing you've put together. Let's show you some demos. And then as soon as the demos are over, every artist hand in the room, raises their hand and they have real questions that like really press. Like, hey, how actually are you doing that? Is that something you can reproduce? Can I scale this? Is this a real thing? Like, how could I do this for real life? And it just falls apart. And they're like, okay, yeah, yeah, we hear you. Send us an email. Let us know when you want to use this. And they run out of the room. So it's like, the thing I've always stressed, and to your point, Matt, it's like, look, I want to understand the why, but I'm also open. Like if you're coming at me in my last job, I sat across from engineers who I loved, and they were very smart. They were not thinking about it as an artist, and they were sometimes confused at my hesitancy. Just like, hey, let's really think about this. Like, why? Like this stuff just comes flying out of the pipe. Like it was very strange to them because in them it's like, hey, we made numbers and numbers did this thing, and now there's more numbers and it's great. But with mutual respect, there's sort of, okay, I know you don't totally get where I'm coming from, and you will never understand my position as someone who has worked really hard to get to this point. But let's like you listen to me, I'll listen to you. Maybe some adjustments are made on how we approach that. Can we look at training the model a little bit differently? Like there's lots of things that I think we have to do to continue to push on. Because right now it's just a tidal wave of BS. Let's be really honest. Like it's being over marketed, overhyped. It's going to get homogenized. I mean, there's going to be so much crap in the next 2 to 5 years that there is going to be a bit of a circle back where it's like, oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah.
The amount of
It's like,
money being
yeah,
dumped into this is
totally. And then some of it's
unbelievable.
not viable. We're killing the environment. You can't actually spend that much money per month and not make anything back. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that's going to boomerang, but it's a little bit like Jurassic Park. It's like you spent so much energy figuring out if you could. Did you actually stop to think if you should? And I think like some of that is actually going to affect the bottom line as well. It's almost like the Pixar style. As good as the Pixar style was, when everyone just started doing it, you're like, okay, yeah, 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 it's a Pixar movie. No, it's not. It's like 10 studios over, but everything looks the same. This is way worse in the sense that it's much quicker, faster, and replicatable. And so the thing, whether it's games or film or anything, you're going to be getting ads served up for some mobile game that is, you cannot tell the difference between that and the other game you got 3 minutes ago and some other thing they're telling you about and the hot dog stand down the street. That's not going to help anyone. So my hunch is once we get past this chaos of, oh my God, I can hit all these buttons, there's a thing that's going to come back called art direction that's actually going to be one of the more powerful roles in this pipeline, because even if you have these magic buttons and you're a businessman and you've got beautiful images coming out of the pipe, you don't really know like what you're firing or where you're firing it or how it's affecting people. So artists and art directors and people who can guide that are still, no matter what tools you're using, going to need to be involved in the process. And there's of course a lot of nuance in between there.
That's good to hear. And I'd like to be a part of a further conversation with you, Jeremy, on this. I got to take off. I hope you
Yeah,
guys have. I know you're going to have more good talk on this. Yeah,
we'll do it again.
Awesome. Yeah,
awesome.
really nice to
Definitely.
meet you, Matt.
Yeah, nice
Yeah.
to meet you too, Jeremy. I'm going to take off. You guys be well. Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody, for
All right.
being here. Bye bye.
You
See ya.
too.
So my I have to fight my lack of optimism
I'm with you.
a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, like so I agree. Like the art direction part of it, definitely. And then my mind goes to, but what about all the production artists? And what about all the people who have to start off somewhere doing something that can now be done instantly,
Yeah.
or, you know,
I'm not very
and
optimistic about that, to be clear.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I
and
think
that's a
that's something
lot
that
of
we could talk about.
jobs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like you said, I look at a company like Hallmark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just being real. And we know people at Hallmark, but it's like just
Yep.
being real. It's like if I look at traditional illustration, especially with, I mean, look, you and I know this. We've been artists for a very long time. No matter who's doing the art or what level of work we're applying to it, I'd say 8 times out of 10, the people that have hired us to do that art they don't really understand,
Mm-hmm.
the work that's going in or exactly what we're doing or why what we're doing is special versus somebody else. It's just like, hey, I need this thing. And your goal as an artist is to build a relationship with that person and they trust that you'll deliver what they need. But you know, there's not enough of an understanding of the process to where if someone said, hey, I can offer you a program that's already on the web, that if literally in a day, you could design your whole line of greetings cards. And then you could use the rest of the year to go on vacation. Like there's nothing that you or I could do if we're
Nope.
illustrators to be like, no, 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 let me do it. I will put in more care. Like I
Yeah.
don't think that's a thing. And
Yeah.
so, you know, to Matt's point, it's like, I'm it's weird because I'm sort of dual mind on this. I'm optimistic in the sense that I do think they're going to step in it real bad at the beginning. And I do think they're going to need people like art directors, creative directors, like people are going to need to get this thing back on the rails in a way that, yes, it's going to be a different tool set. Yes, you're probably going to have to pay attention to different stuff. But it's almost like, it's sort of like, and I hate when people say, oh, yeah, this is no different than Photoshop. Well, yeah, it is. It's a lot different than Photoshop, but I'll
Mm-mm.
use it as an example. When I came around and sort of, learned how to be a professional artist, Photoshop was there, but it was still kind of, it wasn't as what it is now. And you had people that went to school and learned how to draw in Photoshop, right? And they're like, okay, here's what I'm doing. And here's where I do this. And I scale it and I use this and I pop this filter on. And you're like, cool, but like your character proportions are off. They're like, oh, I could just
You're
do this. I'm like, no, 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 like sketch it. So I'm almost using that same thing. When I went to Disney, one of the first things they did was had us draw with a matchstick. And I was like, what the hell? But it was just like, you have a rock, do the thing. Can you still do the thing? And then you build your tools on top of your knowledge. So do I think that exists? Probably not. But do I think that if you're savvy enough to pay attention to the tools that are evolving into what's happening, but keeping an eye on actual artistic ability, things like color theory and character design and just proportions and aesthetics and lighting, like you will be a king among men for a while. It's almost like, you got like programs to do 3D. It's like, well, I can do this, and it's like, well, yeah, but what if you really like knew what you were doing. So even something like Midjourney, like I admit I'm in Midjourney futzing around. I would never use Midjourney right now in a project. I think it's, I mean, we could talk about the unethical way that
Yeah.
there, I mean, there's a whole bunch,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
my eyes are wide open for like what's happening, who's using what is going on. And so to me, that is the way I want artists like breaking into this stuff all the time. Don't put your head in the sand. I think that's the wrong thing. So, as upset as I am about, three people a day on whatever platform saying, artists are dead.
Mhm.
Like I got it. That's a natural first reaction. But for me, it's time for us to get hyper nosy. Like my nose is poked in everything, just like you. It's like, hey, I found these things online. I watched the Nvidia stuff yesterday. Like, I am super eager to understand what's going on. If someone wants to tell me how AI is going to take over whatever, um, I'll listen to them. And I think it's important that we don't run from it, because I do think that I
Head in
think
the sand is not gonna
yes, the
help
industry is
you.
going to change.
Yeah.
I do think jobs are going to be lost, but I also think potentially those jobs, if you're paying attention, you're gonna evolve and go in and be a player in a different way. Um, I know I'm rambling, but the one thing I will compare this to, when I first started working at Disney, I worked in a building right next to the animation building, and the animators were gods on earth. I was like enamored with them. They were making these incredible movies. They were the best artists I'd ever seen. They knew anatomy backwards and forwards. I mean, you go to the cafeteria, don't talk to the animators. Like, it was the animators, Disney animators. It was a very big deal. And literally within a few years that I was there, when Toy Story came out, and then suddenly 2D animation sucks. And before I left Disney, they cleaned out the animation building. It's when they moved the few remaining animators to California. They weren't going to do 2D anymore. And there was a moment in time where they had opened up one of the walls in the side of the building, and they were pushing the animation desks off the floor into dumpsters. My point is that all of those people said, no, screw you. We don't want to learn 3D. We're 2D, which I
Hmm.
respect. The problem is that at that moment, the view of what animation was going to be and how new tools were so important completely occluded any ability and talent that they had. So I don't want to be that where I'm like, I'm not listening to any of this.
Right.
But I do think if you just sort of keep going and pay attention and still keep your values, it's going to be valuable. You're going to still be a part of the creative industry, but you got to let some of this work its way out, and then you've got to stay durable, as you're
Right.
looking at tools and how you do things. But it's going to be a ride, much like our world in the next like X years. It's going to be a ride, and I think it's just kind of figuring out how you come out on the other end.
Yeah. It's gonna be a ride, all right. Yeah, the pace at which this stuff changes is
Yeah,
what's really different about this. Well, there's a couple things that I think are different, but the pace is definitely different. Even with art and technology, Photoshop came out and you wait another year and you got a new version and
yeah,
there's
an
few new
update.
things or whatever. This, it's like if you're not looking at it like from 1 month to the next, it's like, um,
Yeah,
yeah. The other thing is that well, there's a couple other things. One is it's doing a lot more of all the steps.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
it's
like you
almost
said,
it's
yeah,
just delivering final. You know what I mean? It's
right,
like it's like
yeah,
here's
yeah,
your thing. Like,
yeah,
whoa,
yeah.
yeah,
Like, oh, I didn't have to do almost anything.
right,
And then, like to your point, the ability to get it to do exactly what you want, like you know, uh, an artist being art directed, isn't there. But if it I don't even know what percentage it's there now, but if it's like you were saying, I think you said 80% or whatever. But if it gets 75% there and 90% of people are okay and fine with it being
yeah,
75%,
yep.
that's all they care about.
Well, like I said, I think that's going to be a tidal wave, because I think
Yeah.
most people will be that for a while.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think of all
eh,
the low level jobs, not low level, but entry level
yeah,
jobs. Have you used Ideogram at all?
no,
Okay, that's one that does illustration and artwork, but also is geared towards logos and design.
ideogram. Okay,
Yeah, and most people are going to be happy with the designs that that thing makes,
Yes.
and they're not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I think about everybody, like somebody who just graduated in graphic design, and their first jobs are going to be making a logo for this, bakery down the
Yeah.
street, or
Yeah.
for whatever, and pulling that rug completely out is going to be a massive adjustment for any artistic creative career where there used to be this entry level. A lot of people were doing. You remember commissions were so big for a while.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not that's
I
I can get 100 versions of my favorite character in 5 seconds.
I think you're totally right. And as I've said before, I think there's a seismic shift in those types of jobs. I don't think we can
Yeah.
get away from that.
Yep.
The difference for me, so I don't know how, I mean, so I don't know what the majority is or what the percentages are, but like for
Yeah.
me, when I get a commission, it's because I want that artist's interpretation of something, right? So if I was
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, I want you to draw me X, it's not really that I want to see what X looks like. I want the Brian Ballinger X, right? So to me, it's almost like, I mean, here I am wearing an Apple Watch. It's like the Apple Watch, I don't, the way I am, I've had an Apple Watch now for a very long time. I don't think I would go back to wearing a regular watch just because there's too much data now on my wrist. I love it. It keeps track of like my runs and like it's part of my ecosystem. However, the one thing that would break that for is if I found the right like piece of art, like watch made by a human, that I was like, oh, this is great. It's not because I want to know the time. It's because that's a different type of experience for me. So the bad news is that the numbers of art are going to go down, like the human made art are going to go down. The maybe okay news is that I think a sub genre of like creation is going to come out of this, which is it's not AI. And so while do I think that's going to be, I know, do I think that's going to be big enough to cover what we're losing? I do not.
Yeah.
But what I guess what I'm saying though is it's much more important now. Like, to give you an example, my son is going to SCAD for game design. And even now, it's like, you see it like the professor's like, okay, well, let's crack open this AI program and let's try whatever. And I'm like, okay, yes, but
But
but if you don't have the fundamentals, like then it's suddenly you homogenize everyone. You're like, okay, everyone's just opening the program.
yeah,
So yeah,
anybody could do that.
I sort of feel like that with art, where like there are still styles of art that like AI is not touching. It doesn't understand. It's not going to get there. I would say your style is kind of one of those, but it'll get there. My
Yeah.
point though is there's to me the human touch is still a piece of art to me, not to everyone, but to
Right.
me.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Well,
I know
it's
that
a
it doesn't
relation.
replace.
It's part of us being human and relation and
It
being
is.
relational.
And
Yeah.
all that AI is doing is it's replicating that. Let's be
Yeah.
really clear. It's saying, "Oh, here's brushstrokes." It doesn't understand why those brushstrokes were placed a million times in that way on that style of art, but it's gathering all of those moments. So will my relationship with human art um, offset the the loss of actual human production art jobs? No, it won't. Will our industry ever be the same? Being really honest, nope,
No.
it won't.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that is a solution to the problem or a fix for the bleeding. I'm just saying there is something interesting here. Like once we get past the tidal wave of AI can replicate everything, where it's going to be a hollow spot. And I don't know how to fill that or what's going to fill it or where it's going to fill it, but it's a thing.
Well, there may be. I'm sure. Yeah. There's the possibility for sure that there will be something really interesting and good that comes out of all of this. Like the
But
commercialization of art has its downsides,
oh
right?
yeah, but that's a battle.
And
That's a battle that
and the
you know what I mean? That's a battle that's
homogenization.
existed forever.
But if that goes away, then maybe non-commercial art will get a big boost. Um, like I was saying, my big struggle is I'm always like, but wait. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, when it gets to the point where it can do my style as good as I can,
Mhm.
and you can't tell the difference, then somebody could say they're doing this, and they're like, "Oh, I love that artist," and he may never have made any of it.
It's totally
Um,
true.
yeah, and yeah, so I don't know. Um, but the relational side of it is 100% a big part of I think performing arts are going to be around forever because
Mhm.
you know, you like to watch somebody, you like see somebody
Until
dance or
the
somebody
robots. Yeah.
until the robots, and then you can't tell, and then we won't care.
Hmm. Then we're Blade
Yeah,
Runner. Yeah.
then we don't care. um yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
look,
and you wonder.
it's why we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
It's bigger than like automation. Like, oh, hey, we used to make, bouncy balls by hand, and now we're making bouncy balls on the production line. It's bigger than that because
Oh, it
art
is.
is weird. It's
Mm-hmm.
different. It's an expression. Literally, art is a human expression, or has been. So it has been. So now that's the big conversation. But
Right.
as of right
It
now, it's a
is
collection of
AI
human
art.
expressions.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? And
Yep.
so there we get into sci-fi, where it's like, do robots have feelings? And it's like, oh my gosh, then now we're, hunting them in the streets. So I think this is the beginning of a conversation that's probably never going to stop. I think the broader conversation is what we value. What do we value? Right now, with the AI in every corner. I mean, we value production, we value execution, we value money. We value
Money.
money.
It's
Yeah, and
money.
so if we value money, there is
Right.
no reason to have you or I sit down and sketch out something, because we're a particular style. No reason.
That's why the bifurcation of commerciality and art, there could be something good about that.
Right.
Um,
But I
but
think just
it's
yeah, it's
but in
it's
the
it, it's not
meantime,
that
it's going to be
clean.
a
Yeah.
wave, like you said.
And
Yeah.
I will tell you, I mean, again, back to my industry, the game industry, AI is going to be, I mean, AI right now is being implemented in pretty much every game studio. And by AI, by the way, I have to qualify. AI has been in games for a very long time.
Right.
NPC characters running around as a companion, that's AI. And so let's separate this from the generative AI that we're looking at now. It's being implemented in every big game studio, publisher. It's too intoxicating. It's too big. It's like, wait, so we can do this? Wait, we can crank this out. We can do this with a smaller team. And so if you look at most studios that make games and big games that you know and love, they're talking about it. Now, there are standouts. Nintendo, I always love them. They're like,
Yeah.
we're going the other way. And I'm
Hmm.
like, yes. So, but here's the thing. Nintendo has set up their plan already. They don't have to change their plan because they take their time. They put it out when they're ready. They don't worry about like fidelity races. They make sure it's super fun. Like they don't
Yep.
have to change. So they're not
Yeah.
doing anything like noble. They're just like, no, we're who we are.
Yep.
Which by the way is probably noble long before now, but that's not the point. So but what I'm saying is there's going to be some implementation of generative AI in most games. Now, I think for me, people like myself, there's a challenge of, okay, if you say the snowball's rolling down the hill, can't push it back up, is it create a task for us to figure out how is there a way? How do we do this? Starting with ethically trained models. Everything's internal to the studio. We train
Hmm.
on models of art that we have created over the last X amount of years. So when we put in something, it is pulling from stuff that we own. Okay, that's really hard to do because your sample size goes down from like a
Hmm.
trillion gajillion to like, several thousand. But it's possible. Problem, cost money. Oh, we don't like that. So there's going to be those conversations. But let's just say we could get there. Then, something I propose is like, look, if you're actually saying we want this to be good for the artists, let's back way off of like speed, everything that we're currently talking about. If you could give the artist an AI assistant, just think about it. Like I'm the artist, I'm sitting there, I love my job. There's probably some monotonous little bits. I don't know what they are, but we're just
Yeah.
saying, hey, you've got this assistant at your behest. What does that look like? I don't know, but let's think about it. Now, time, money are involved in these processes. This is where it's going to fall down, but maybe some studios will survive. If you tell me, hey, Jeremy, um, you're going to be designing a character, and we're, you have the ability to go to your AI assistant that's been trained only on our proprietary stuff, and you say, hey, I really want to see the first pass of a turnaround on this character design. Not for final, but I want you to chunk it out for me. I have no idea how I'm going to deal with whatever. That kind of excites me in the sense that, like, okay, that could save me some time, and I probably won't look at half of what you've given me, but it's going to give me some, like, it's going to get my brain churning on how I might do this arm and the back piece going into here and
You've
what's
seen that Illustrator demo, right?
exactly. But
Yeah.
my point is, like, if we can build on things like that, that's like, oh no, this is actually a thing that you'd want to. I still think it's a tightrope. I don't necessarily want, a computer finishing out my thoughts or, hey,
It's
doing
a
this.
slip. It's the yeah.
It's
It's
a slippery
navigating
slope.
that
It's
slippery
a
slope.
slippery slope. So I think slippery slope is probably the thing I would put on the wall for everything that we're talking about. And then I think it doubles back to the conversation you and I are having. What do we value?
Hmm.
If we value getting the art out looking relatively good in half the time and generally people are okay, I don't think we can compete with that.
Yeah.
That's a thing. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Are there boutique experiences that real humans made all of and they cost 10 times as much? I don't know. So I think there's a valiant effort to stay updated. I mean, I love what you do because you're always sending me stuff and you're always thinking about it. And I think, it's our job to try to be as creative as we can while not keeping our head in the sand. I
Yeah.
also think it's our job though to say, hey, that's not super cool, and that's not ethical in my mind, and hey, that's give me the opportunity to help you maybe steer that in a different direction.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know how effective it's going to be. You know?
And I think for me also AI specific tools that are AI um, can help with the slippery slope thing too.
Yeah.
Um, it's where the AI systems that just keep getting bigger and doing more and more and starting to get more of the intelligence part behind it is where it's harder with the slippery slope too. But if you have a specific AI tool that's made to do a specific thing,
Hmm.
um, I think that's much easier. I've been using one where so I will sculpt and model something, and then I need to generate a depth map for it because I'm using
Yep.
my laser engraver to make some jewelry or some coins or whatever. And so I can model the whole thing and then put it in some software and render out a depth pass, etc. But there's some AIs out there where all I have to do is give it a render of it with
Yep.
crap lighting, and it will generate the depth map instantly, and
Yep.
it's way better than actually rendering a depth
But see,
pass.
that's a good example where
And
it's
and
like
it's yeah,
it's specific.
it's
It's
a
a tool
specific
at
tool.
your for
Yep,
your need, right?
yep,
As the artist.
yep. And
Yeah.
I don't feel at all like, okay, now I've been less creative with this. It's just like,
Right.
oh, now I can get to what I want to do faster. Um,
Yeah.
but
I agree. Like I said, I
yeah,
think I think there's. I mean, and again, there's nuance and middle of the road everywhere. If you look at like I'm a huge fan of like the Spider-Verse like art style, all the
yeah,
animation stuff they did, but they created like all these like machine learning programs to go in and like place the line. Like
yep,
when they're going into the 3D models, it's like it's suggesting placement for like the ink lines.
yep,
That's freaking great. Because
yeah,
again, you've set up an ask. You've built a thing that can suggest like answers to your problems,
yep.
and still tons of work. Going in from artists all over the place to make it feel special, right?
Hmm.
Um, Now, again, someone would tell you that's great, Jeremy, but that was an incredibly painstaking process, and oh my God, I'm not sure we'd want to spend that much time again. Blah blah. Anything like that tends to balloon. But I don't know. I mean, I think that's both my wonder of the situation and my frustration. Where
It's both, isn't it?
it
Isn't it?
is,
It's
it
like
is
it's like
because
this
as
battle,
creatives, this is something we've done our whole career. Something
right?
new will come out, and you're like, oh, I wonder. I
But
mean, I still remember.
we
Yeah,
also like
exactly. Like,
technology, and we're like, oh, this is
yeah.
cool, but then it's also like,
I mean,
but
all the
that's
way up to
taken
like watching sci-fi. You're
right.
like, oh, that's cool. We could have a robot that walks next to us and helps us do whatever. I mean, like
Yeah,
we're headed there. But what does that mean? Up to
right.
like watching Wall-E and we're all sitting in a chair drinking protein Slurpees.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's it, and I think that's why a lot of these conversations. And again, Matt was right. Like I've spent a lot of time in the last year, like dealing with this head on and being
Hmm.
in rooms with both executives and engineers and people who are like, well, this is what we're doing. This is what we have to do.
I
Um,
can
oh yeah. And
picture
it's
it.
like,
Yep.
you know me, like I'm pretty respectful guy. And and I've told everyone, look, I'll start by asking 10 questions. Like I'm not waving my hands and saying, screw you. Like that's never me. I'm always, I'm curious. And you always run into these interesting spots where it's like, okay, from a non-creative perspective, this makes a hell of a lot of sense. From a creative perspective, do we want to push, where do we want to push quality? It's this sort of slider, quality, time, money.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and to be fair, I think the thing that we have to deal with is something you said. A lot of times it doesn't make sense to not slide, you know, like to look, if you can slide the money slider all the way down and the quality slider pretty high, you know, um, a lot of the time, it doesn't make a lot of sense to avoid that. So I think that's where the evolution for us as sort of a creative group comes in. But like, where do you hold the line? What do what is important? What do we value? And I think we could do a lot more conversations on that because even if you take specific points, talk about the ethics. How is it different than you and I looking at a
Yeah.
piece of reference and then drawing an
Yeah.
image? How does this work across scaling? And don't you want to make bigger, better things? I mean, there's so many things you could just say. Let's talk about this one thing,
Yeah.
and you could go on for hours.
It's
It's huge.
huge. Well,
So
the other
I think that's the key.
yep. The other thing I think about too is so we always, at least, yeah, people of our generation and earlier always thought, okay, robots will come along and the machines will come along, and the last thing they'll be able to do is art.
Right. Human expression.
Human expression, they'll do everything else, but they'll always be human artists and then, a couple weird breakthroughs and whoops, it's the
Yeah.
opposite. It's now,
Yeah.
so we're kind of we're at the head of this spear of, you know, this is now be able to do a lot of stuff that we were doing,
Yeah.
um, but it's coming for everything else.
It is.
The
Well, and it
programmers are
is.
feeling it, are starting to feel
Yeah.
it now.
Oh yeah.
Now they're starting to feel like, well, what do we need you for? I can, Chat
But
GPT can program
I think
anything I want.
that's the
So
key is commercial
it's
versus otherwise.
yeah,
Because I don't want to listen to music really that's not an expression of an artist.
right.
I don't necessarily want to watch a movie right now, at least, and I say that right now, that isn't great actors acting because I love that. I love seeing them do that. But that's not to say that that those things are not going to get closer and closer to the reality of just hitting play on something.
I was having a conversation with Steve Leeper, if you remember him.
Oh yeah,
And we were like, what? It's going to be really weird the first time we look at something that's completely AI generated and we have a reaction to it that's the same as if a person, like, we can't
yeah,
tell and it's hitting us right here.
yeah,
That's going to be, if that ever happens,
yeah. I think we got
which
a
I don't know it
while.
will, but
Yeah,
if it does, or it's just that it gets to the point where you just cannot tell at the
right.
highest level of expression that it's whether it's human or not.
I think to close this for me, here's what I would say. I have learned in my many years being on this earth to never say it's not going to get there. It will.
Right,
It will get there.
right.
I mean, I remember saying I'll never draw directly on the screen of a computer. That's how. I mean, I remember
Yep,
that.
yep,
So I know, especially with the pace of everything, even if even if we have a blowout and it slows down, like we're going to keep pushing on this.
yep.
So I think for me, it's like the same rules apply. Let's be the best people we can. Let's be kind to each other. Let's be curious. And whatever is happening in 5 years is probably not what we think it is right now. It's just
True.
not. I've
Yep.
never designed anything that's ended exactly the way I first started designing it. It's just not never going to happen. So I'd like to think that I've gotten, wise enough, I'll use that expression, although I don't believe that, to know that things are not going to go the way we think.
Yep.
And things are going to be better and different than we're imagining now. And they're going to be more powerful and more all encompassing. Now, that may open new spaces for artists, that may change how we approach art in general, but it will definitely change things. And so I think as long as we go in knowing that, and just not be a-holes, I think we'll be in a much better position than trying to rush in and grab the thing that's going to be successful, or oh my god, how should I think now? No, I mean, stay on track, but just be really curious about, the tools and how things are being executed. That's all we can do, because
Yeah.
if not, you're going to be grasping at straws and getting frustrated. And yeah, I think that's all we have.
Yep. I agree. All right. On that note, we will have to do this again.
Yes, absolutely. This was fun. Thank you.
Rock on.